Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. As with all my videos, it's using non-best in slot gear, minimal to no perks, and no set rotations. As always, just remember that our goal here is not optimal rotations, it's not fast kills, and it's not peak performance. I'm here just to help show you what you're capable of, even if you don't know it yet. Better kills come with time and practice, and right now is the best time to start. With that, good luck with everything you do, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you. Hey guys, and welcome to my guide for Solak. This is for solo, however, this whole guide will apply for groups as well, and I'll go over some of the things with being in a group. If you can do this, then you can base pretty much any encounter, because as your group size goes up, for the most part, except for a few things in the first phase, the fight only gets easier. Just for a reference, in solo, Solak has a total of 2 million HP if you exclude anything like the rootlings, the elf, and the eruptions, and he only gains 1 million HP per person joined. So solo you have to do 2 million damage, and in duo both of you only have to do 1.5 million, and that number kind of goes down per person as people join. So that is just for your own knowledge sake moving forward. And with that, we will start with our gear setup. So as far as augmentations and perks, on the main hand, I have P5 Genocidal. It's really basic, really cheap, and easy to get. On the body, I have Crackling 4 and Relentless 5. These are damage specific kind of perks. They're cheap to get individually. You can get them as a combination to free up a slot, but that's a lot more expensive, so I opted out of that. For our offhand, we just have Invigorating 4. That's for extra adrenaline. And for our legs, we have Enhanced Devoted 4, which is going to save you a lot of health and food. And we have Biting 2, and this is super easy to get. It's just a little bit extra damage and chance for crits. And you'll notice that in this video, we're not using tank armor, we are using the power armor. And the reason for that is if you are solo or if you are the base, Solak has 100% accuracy against you no matter what. I've tested it a whole bunch, and the darkness and incantation, as well as the dodge chance passive from the tank armor, does not work for the base. So that's why we are opting out of the tank armor, because since we don't get the benefit of the passive, we might as well go for a little bit extra damage. This is an end game boss, so he does hit pretty hard. If you need the extra health reserves from the tank armor, feel free, but it will make some of the DPS checks also a little bit harder to hit. With that said, for the rest of the gear, we just have the Zuck Cape, which is extremely helpful for a lot of your damage. We have the Blood Amulet, which is just extra healing and decent stats, which in a fight that's this long, the healing is really helpful. We have Cinderbane Gloves, because Solak is poisonable, and that poison damage will amp up a lot over time. It definitely adds up and helps you out a lot. We have the Ring of Death, because it is more than likely, as you're learning, you'll probably die here, and this just kind of helps, if you're, give you a little bit leeway for death costs and such. But that is definitely upgradable, because a few spots later on, like the last phase and such, that you might die, the Ring of Death wouldn't help you anyways, because it's an instant kill. So if you can upgrade that, by all means, go for it. And for our pocket slot, we have the Book of Balance. It's just a lower tier version of the current meta God Wars Dungeon 3 books, like full Jas and Wen. But it does work, and it's cheap, and it's easy to get. So that's just what I'm using here. And as far as my aura, I'm using Dark Magic just because it's another easy aura to get. It's not, and it sort of acts almost like poison, where it does a corruption damage over time, which again, at a long fight like this, that damage also will add up. However, just note that that damage is not stackable. So if you are in a group and multiple people are using dark magic, it will not help you. So at any given time, you'd only ever want one person using this aura in any group scenario. Just kind of a note. With that, also, let's go real quickly over the inventory. It is my typical Importance of Restoration, Brews and Blubbers, and then the Shard and Excalibur, because again, this is a long fight, so there is a specific part where I really like to use Excalibur, just kind of helps, and then the Shard is nice for prayer if you're not using penance powder or anything like that. We have the rune pouches, which hold all the runes for a lot of different things, and particularly in my case, having access to Disruption Shield, if you have it, is extremely helpful. We have the expensive spices because it makes the food that we eat heal a little bit more, and any extra healing is always appreciated. We have our overload. This is a fight where whatever your best overload is, you definitely want to bring it. Don't downgrade that. So don't just use a normal one if you have access to better. We have the Nexus, which has all of the Ectoplasm and Necro runes for summoning. We have our Vuln Bombs, which is a big help in this. 10% damage over a long fight is, again, a lot of free extra damage. We have the Restore Flask, which is just extra prayer points. We have the Power Burst of Vitality, which is very helpful at a couple spots that I'll go over. We have our Weapon Poison, because again, Solak is poisonable, so that is pretty critical. And then we have just a normal Adrenaline. If you have Adrenaline Ooze, then by all means, it's Super Adrenaline, whatever you have. I'm just using the baseline Adrenaline Potion because there's some points where you definitely want Adrenaline quickly, and this is a fight where it is absolutely worth using almost always. There's no reason not to. And as you move forward, definitely start getting in the habit of doing that because it will help you a lot. So with that, we are going to start the fight, kind of get right into it, and start going over our mechanics. If you have Dominion Mines in solo, they don't work because the Rootlings don't have enough health, but starting off at duos and then more, definitely you can start spawning them. The easiest way to know where to place them is right as you join. If you just click one tile east or west and then surge, it's going to drop you exactly where you need to go, and you can drop your Dominion Mines. Again, that's not for solo, but just food for thought if you do group content. So we're going to start the fight, and you are going to notice that in this fight, I am not using Storm Shards or Shatter for the last phase, the DPS phase. It's just to prove that you don't need it. However, it definitely makes it a lot easier. So if you find you're struggling at that last phase and you have the Storm Shard Shatter ability, or you go pick up that Codex, then you'll see on my Revolution bar, you can swap where the Storm Shard and the Necro auto attack is, and then the Storm Shards will be building for you throughout the fight. And if you don't want to swap those, you can always do that manually along the fight as you go along. So we are going to get right into it. And another thing before we start is you're going to see I'm pretty actively prayer flicking. If you are doing this in a group and you're not the base, you can have darkness up, and for the most part, you can camp soul split, but as the base, since you're not dodging anything, having those prayer flicks is pretty crucial to staying alive, on top of the fact that I have a Blood Reaver and it will be helping heal me. And to make sure that the Blood Reaver dies throughout the fight, you want to be dropping your Prism of Restoration. I also don't use Split Soul as much as I could. That is simply because you don't need it. It is hugely helpful on your damage, but if you are struggling with staying alive as opposed to doing damage, then reducing the amount of healing from Soul Split is not necessarily what you want to do. So let's get right into it. You're going to get everything ready, get your pocket slot on, prayers on. I like to drop a prism right at the start just to make sure that the Reaver stays nice and healthy. And we are going to begin. So you're going to quick start, you're going to Vuln him, and right out the gate, I always just like to do my Living Death. And right after Living Death, drink your Adrenaline Potion, and you're going to see that he threw his arms in the air and he does a pad, basically, where he's going to create one pad per person, and then you're going to get an overhead explosion. So you saw I used a Power Burst of Vitality right there to double my health because the pad was nowhere in sight, and instead of trying to find it to get to it, you just Power Burst kind of right after he throws his hands in the air, and it'll last long enough for the duration of that pad. After that goes off, you see this bar over my head that's charging. That is going to hit me this 8k always. The pad is 4,000 to 5,000 damage per person in the group. The overhead is always 8k, no matter how many people are in the group. And you'll see the way I opted to deal with it is I used Disruption Shield and Resonance at the same time. The reason I stacked those is as base, since his auto attacks hit exactly when he hits you, the timing to be an on-tick Disruption Shield is a little bit harder to figure out. So if you stack the two, the overhead explosion is going to pop one of them, and his auto attack will pop the other of the two abilities of the Resonance and Disruption Shield. That is one method on dealing with it, and it works for solo. In groups with that initial pads, sometimes the bit pop won't be enough once you start to get to 3 or 4 people, depending on your health when you use it. So before we continue this fight, I'm just going to real quick go over a couple other ways that you can deal with these initial P1 mechanics. So on this one specifically, the pad spawned really close to me, which is super nice. So I just went right to it, and you'll see I took absolutely no damage. My health did not go down. Then because of that, since I know I'm getting hit with an 8k, obviously I could just tank it, but I'm trying to treat this like under the impression that I don't necessarily have full health. Not everyone in the group might have grabbed a pad. So at that point, as long as you have 5,000 health when you Power Burst, you're going to bring your health over that 8,000, and you're going to be fine. So if pads are close by, you can do that, and that's a decent way to kind of save you some adrenaline if you don't have any adrenaline for defensives, or if you don't have, Disruption Shield. You can do it that way, but I would only recommend that if the pads are close enough where you can go to the pad and not stop attacking Solak, because you want to keep attacking him the whole way through. And then the third way I'll show you to take care of that mechanic is if the pad isn't close, then again, we are just going to use our Power Burst of Vitality. And at this point, like I said, if there's multiple people in the group, nobody's grabbing a pad, you can use your Vit Pot, and you can also stack it on top of a defensive, be that Debilitate or Reflect, it doesn't matter. However, if you don't have Disruption Shield unlocked and you use your Vit Pot, so that's not an option, what you can do is you can Devotion, and then you can use Resonance. And this works because now his auto attack is not going to snipe that Resonance away from you. and the resonance is only going to be popped from that overhead explosion. So those are just 3 ways that, depending on the situation you find yourself in, or the group size, or where pads are, how things are going, those are just kind of a couple ways that you can take care of those initial mechanics. And from there, we're going to just be hanging out, sort of keep an eye on the timer in that top right corner or wherever you have it on your screen, because around the 45 to 50 second mark, I like to go hop onto the rootlings and just start killing those, because I'm fully aware that I'm not getting root skips, so there's no point in me kind of stressing myself out and going so late that the rootlings then spawn into the lashers and the lashers start killing me. So I might as well just move on to the rootlings and deal with it. So at 1 minute and 6 seconds, assuming you haven't done a root skip, which requires you to get Solak to 1.5 million health before 1 minute and 6 seconds, you're going to take a look at your character, and you're going to take a look at your mini-map. So as we can see on our mini-map, there's that little gold arrow, and that's telling us where these rootlings are going to spawn from. And if you look at your character, there's an arrow also pointing directly at where they're going to spawn from. There's this wonderful timer in the middle of my screen counting down to when the rootlings are going to spawn. If they touch you, they will stun you, and they do a ton of damage. However, if you keep moving, if you just click away from them, or if you use anticipate right before the timer, or if you use freedom, then you can just keep moving, run right out of it, and you don't have to deal with the damage. However, if you are not in solo mode and you opt to just run away and ignore it, the way I handled this right here is not what you want to do, because as you can see, those roots are now shooting across the entire map, and it doesn't matter in solo because you're the only person and you know what's going on. However, in a group scenario, if there was any poor soul stuck up there in that area, those roots are now hitting him. They stunned him, he had no idea what was going on, and now your duo, trio, whatever your group partner is getting absolutely obliterated. So in that instance, you want to try and get as close as you can to where those roots spawn, and as soon as they come out, you already used your anticipate or your freedom, whatever you need to make sure they don't stun you, and then you surged away, you dove away, you just clicked away, anything. But you just want to make sure that you're super close to where those roots are, so that you're not accidentally killing anybody in your group without meaning to. So once that's taken care of, you're going to just continue on your merry way, killing all the rootlings. Now keep in mind, if you don't kill them all before they turn into lashers, like this one just did, they're going to hit you with ranged. It's more important, depending on, I would say, if there's less than 2 lashers, then stay on melee prayer. Use reflect if you need to, because you're taking multiple types of damage. But if there's a whole bunch, then you might want to debilitate Solak and then swap to range prey as you kill them. But as long as you're leaving a little early and you're not trying to wait as long as possible, then you should be fine on killing the lashers. And then at that point, you're into arms and legs. And what I have found, the easiest way to deal with arms and legs is if you stay on Solak and you don't click on the arms and legs, you're going to be targeting the head. And as you can see, you can't actually damage him in this portion, hence all those immune signs. But he is in between both arms. And what that means for you is if you use the Invoke Death ability, which you can see I used, and then you use Threads of Fate, you can volley, you can Finger of Death, you can use just a basic attack, you can use any single target ability, and it will hit both of the arms. And if you use Invoke Death first, it will put the Invoke on both of the arms. And that is a really easy way to deal with this mechanic, and you don't have to worry about using your volley, because if you just volley and then you use your sap again, you'll get all your souls back. So I like to do volley, then the sap, then the volley, because that will completely destroy the arms with the Invoke Death. You need like 1 or 2 more basics, and then you're good to go. And from there, what I like to do almost every single time is to deal with the legs. I will then split soul because I'm not taking damage, so I might as well increase the damage that I'm doing because I don't need the healing from soul split. And then I'll just target one of them and I will dump all 3 soul scythes. And as you see, what's cool about the soul scythe is there's a chance that between dumping all 3 of those scythes, you're going to get all of your souls back anyways, and you're good to go. So that's kind of my personal favorite way to deal with that, and it works 95% of the time of killing the legs and giving you your souls back. And from there, you're onto the core. And this is super easy because you did not use any Finger of Death on the arms. You have full soul stacks, and you have just enough adrenaline left to use Bloat. And what that means for you is you're going to cast Invoke Death. You're going to target the core. You're going to Vuln it and Bloat it, and then just dump those abilities. And because you have souls and necrosis stacks, you don't need any adrenaline for your volley. You don't need any adrenaline for either of Finger of Deaths. And then just 1 or 2 basics later, that core is dead, and it's a really easy 1 cycle with pretty much no adrenaline needed, no effort needed, and you're good to go. So here, this next portion is the eruptions, the anima storm, the anima rain, all that. And there's a couple ways to do it. If you're doing storm skips, you would just kill those eruptions and you'd run right into the next phase. However, although that increases the time of the fight, it makes it go much faster, it also makes you take a lot more damage. So until you're comfortable with the fight, I would not suggest doing that. There's then 2 ways to do this, which you'll see more experienced people doing, is they'll kill one of the eruptions, and then once it gets to about half health, they'll do the cleanse, and then it kind of makes it so you can do the cleanse, run to the eruption right as it dies, and it kind of makes it so you have no blight stacks moving in. And that's certainly something that you can do, but it takes a little bit of practice with the timing. So I would always suggest you cleanse right away, kill an eruption, and then you're only going to have 1 or 2 blight stacks by the time you come up there, and you're going to spam click on the core. And you're going to move on to the next one. And again, keep an eye on your blight stacks because you do basically a maximum of 10,000 damage with 0 stacks. And for every stack you do 1,000 less damage. So I have 3 stacks and I'm only doing 7,000 damage. If that number gets up past 10, you're going to start healing the core, not hurting it. So if you need to cleanse, you can cleanse as many times as you want. There's no rush on that. However, I saw that I got that pretty low, so I knew it was going to fade out on its own, which you can see in my chat that the last of the blight storm bursts and the storm dissipates, and you're good to go. And at that point, you're going to come up north to the stairs, and you're going to just start your damage rotation. You're going to drop your prism, make sure your Reaver's healthy, do your living death. If you want to, because you're good with flicks and food, you can add your split soul to really crank out the damage. But you're just going to hang out up here and dump out as much damage as you can. And the reason I included this specific clip is you'll see I got a lot of these bombs, and these bombs do damage. And the damage is not set. It starts pretty low when the phase begins, and it ramps up very high over time. And you'll see my damage was mitigated. I didn't do nearly as much as I would have liked to, but that's because I was pretty much spending that whole phase stacking out defensives to make sure I didn't die. But as long as you have Reflect, Debilitate, a whole bunch of defensives at your disposal, you don't have to worry. Just keep flicking, keep paying attention, and keep doing damage. And then at some point, you'll see this Nature's Blessing. And that's this gold orb on the ground. And you want to click on it. When you click on it, just so you know, it's going to pull your target away from Solak. So you need to manually use an ability, or you need to re-click on Solak. Otherwise, you're just going to stand there and you're not going to do any damage. You're just going to be hanging out. So make sure you re-click on it. However, once you get that, you are going to see somewhere on your screen, I have it in the bottom left for me, the extra action button. And what you're going to be waiting for is as soon as his hand comes back down to a normal position, you're going to click on it. It's going to give you this lovely dome around you. And then you're going to get 5 of these pretty big hits where without the dome, they hit like somewhere around 6,000. But with the dome, they only hit like 1,000. It's very, very easily dealt with damage. So you're just going to keep dishing out damage, keep doing your prayer flicks, and you can kind of ignore them. If you need to, you can throw in your reflect, your debilitate, make sure you're using good defensives, and then after that, he's going to start his very first insta-kill mechanic. What's going to happen is he is going to stun you, and he is going to slam his hand on you. And if he does this, you will die, no questions asked. However, you can, if you are used to the timing, then kind of on that 5th hit, you can use anticipate, and you're good to go, because then it won't stun you, and you can just move out of the way. Or if it caught you off guard, as long as you still have freedom available to you, you can use freedom, you can click away, and you won't stand under his hand. And what you're going to do is you're going to run up his arm, and then you're going to manually hit some more abilities, because now during this whole animation, you can keep doing damage. However, make sure that you swap back to your melee prayer before that hit right there, because it is a very big melee hit. It's not just a standard basic, it's like double that, so you don't want to be caught on Soul Split, because it can definitely one-tap you if your health is too low. After that, you're going to go right back to doing damage and just crank it out. You're going to grab another dome, you're going to click on it, you're going to survive the next few anima hits, and the biggest goal here is to finish this phase and kill him before those anima hits are finished, because once that happens, you're going to be getting this blight hurricane, where if you don't have barricade readily available, or if you're not prepared to stack Vit Pot, Disruption Shield, Resonance, Reflect, like every single defensive in the book, it's going to kill you, and it's going to kill you almost every time. So make sure, if you're not at a point where you're going to be phasing him, which is by depleting that purple bar that's under his health that you saw before, if you're not prepared to phase him at this point, make sure you're building adrenaline and you are ready to start dumping defensives. However, we did phase him. We're on to the kind of final phase of the fight, which is the easiest portion of the entire fight, where at this point now, you're just going to be doing damage, and there's not a ton of mechanics at this point that you have to deal with anymore. As the base and as his target, you will not be getting the overhead explosions. However, those overhead explosions that you had at the first phase, anyone else in the group will be getting those. Now, they don't hit 8K like the P1 explosions did. They only hit like 4,000, so they're much more manageable. However, that will be a kind of constant throughout the entire fight. So you're just doing damage here, and you're going to see he says this, give me the life you tightly cling to. You can either anticipate before that happens, or you can freedom after that happens. But either way, Solak is going to stun you, and at that point, that's when you're going to need to stun him back. And if you don't, he's going to start doing tons of damage to everybody. So make sure you stun him when you see that, and you'll get a green bar that you stunned him, and you're good to go. And then you're just going to keep slowly rolling around the arena and charging the pads. And the reason I like just charging them kind of nonstop is because as they charge, once they get fully charged and you see he has this kind of spazzy out animation, he's not hitting you at that point, which means you are free to, during this period, soul split and get all of your health back, which is really nice. So for learning, I would always recommend that you just constantly drag him from pad to pad, because it gives you the maximum amount of time to use soul split. Again, keep your eye out for these stun mechanics. You want to make sure you're prepared for them, that you have at least one soul in reserve or your weapon spec if you really need it. and you're just going to be bringing him down to his HP cap. Make sure you keep your Reaver alive, make sure that you're kind of just paying attention, and also, just as a reference, those overhead explosions that everybody else in your group, if you are doing a group, get, those will then cause the rootlings to spawn in between those players, kind of connecting them like a line. And it'll happen to up to 3 people. And to really just make sure that you're kind of avoiding each other, you're not running those roots into the base or each other, and you should be fine. But just kind of a heads up that is how that works. So anyways, at that point, when you've gotten Solak to his HP cap, which is 100,000 health over the amount of players there are. So if you're solo, it's just you. There's one person, so we make that 200,000 health. If there's 2 people, it's 300,000 health. 4 people, it's 500. 6 people, it's going to be 700,000. And that's just how you know it's 100,000 over the amount of people in the instance. But once you've gotten him down to that HP cap, then once the pad is charged and as he's doing that kind of spaz out animation, you can click on that action button, the extra action button, wherever that is on your screen. It's going to bring you up here to where the elf is, and you're going to kill him. Now, it doesn't necessarily matter how long you take. He's a good way to build stacks if you need to build stacks. He hits with ranged, so if he's hitting you too hard or your health is really low, you can pray ranged, you can use defensives, whatever you need to. But basically, I like to just invoke death him, and then you throw a bloat on him, and it'll kind of, as long as you get him close to low, the bloat should do the rest of the work. If not, just charge another pad and go up there when you need to. But as you can see, the bloat took care of him for me in this instance, so I didn't need to do that. And then at this point, you're just going to start building up, and you're going to do your whole damage rotation. In this particular instance, since you're not taking damage, I highly recommend using Split Soul. If you have it, it will help the damage a lot. And what you want to do is you're going to open up with your bloat, and you want to backload your damage. So bloat and command your skeleton and let them start doing damage. Don't do your volley yet. Don't do anything crazy. Just throw your fingers, make sure the bloat's going, do some basics, and then after that, then you're going to throw your volley. You're going to do a couple more basics. You're going to do your weapon spec, and that should be it. As long as you just, backload your damage, you don't dump your really heavy stuff like your weapon spec and your volley right away, and you kind of let the bloat do a little bit of work, you have them invoked, you're good to go. If you have Storm Shards and Shatter, and you have those built up, that's another free 30,000 damage. So if you just do your bloat, command your skeleton, do both your fingers, do like one more basic, and then volley, shatter, and weapon spec, that'll also take him out, and it just makes the whole fight super simple. So that is kind of my entire overview of Solak, how to do it solo, how to, some of the mechanics for doing it as a group, and hopefully that'll help you guys start, getting your kills. As you can see, I used all the portents, however, I didn't use any of the food. So if you're struggling with the prayer flicks, or if you're taking a little more damage than you'd like, make sure you actually eat the food. It'll help you a ton. And beyond that, best of luck.